What's up, guys? It's Chris here to talk about this weekend's boxing matches going on both Showtime and HBO. Real quick, thoughts on Edwin Valero. I guess he committed suicide last night in his jail cell a day after allegedly murdering his wife. All I got to say is a tragedy all around, tragic ending to a tumultuous life for Edwin Valero. So, not a whole lot to say on it right now. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the radio show this week, but for now, it's pretty much it. If you guys have any thoughts, leave them in the comments section, of course. Moving on to the fights, though. First up on Showtime, we have a fight in the second round of the Super 6 World Boxing Classic. We have Carl the Cobra Froch defending his WBC Super Middleweight title against Mikkel Kessler, the Viking Warrior. Froch coming off the split decision win over Andre Jarrell in the first round of this tournament. A close fight, a fight that a lot of people thought Andre Jarrell won. Mikkel Kessler coming off the technical decision loss to Andre Ward in the first round of the tournament. A fight that I predicted he would win, but he didn't. He obviously got dominated in that fight. This is a good matchup. The first thing that caught my eye is the fight is happening in Denmark. It is happening in Kessler's hometown. And so far, all the fighters that have won fights in this tournament thus far in the first and second round have all won fights in their hometown. So that may be a foreshadowing of things to come. We'll find out, obviously, on Saturday night. But regarding the matchup itself, Froch he's a good fighter. He's undefeated. Got good power. I wouldn't say he's the best technical fighter by any stretch. Mikkel Kessler, I think, has an edge in technique. But I think Froch is the tougher fighter. I would assume, coming off each of their last fights, he's the more confident fighter going into this fight as well. But for some reason, I just think the matchup favors Mikkel Kessler. Now, I also thought that against Andre Ward, and we saw how that played out. But I think Kessler had problems with Ward's speed, which obviously isn't going to be an issue here. Now, Carl Froch is a guy that I think is going to test Kessler, though. I think he's going to test his chin, and I think he's going to test his heart. Kessler seemed to break down midway through that Ward fight. Granted, he was frustrated with the referee, and he was frustrated by the cuts, which is understandable, the cuts that is. But I think Carl Froch is really going to press Mikkel Kessler early on and really test him and see if he can break him, so to speak. Mentally and take him out of the fight. But I think Mikkel Kessler fighting at home is going to have the confidence and the composure to be able to withstand Froch's early assault. Now, then again, Froch is also capable of, bringing it on late. We saw it in the fight against Jermaine Taylor where he knocked him out in the 12th round and he was possibly going to lose the decision, but he knocked out Jermaine Taylor late. So Froch is dangerous from bell to bell. But he didn't look all that good in the Jarrell fight, so I don't know. He won, but he never really was in full control of that fight. But, so, I don't know. I'm going to go with Mikkel Kessler to win this fight. I do think he's a little bit technically sharper. I do think he punches straighter. Like I said, the home field advantage, I do think can play into it. I know Froch is undefeated. I know he is the champion. If it goes to a decision, obviously, you got to assume that Kessler's going to get the edge unless Froch is decisively controlling or has controlled the fight. Let's hope if it does go to a decision, regardless of who. Let's just hope that the right man gets the decision, because you never know when fights go down in other fighters' home cities or home territories. But I'm going to go with Mikkel Kessler to win this fight by decision. But by no means am I counting Carl Froch out of this fight. I do think he can win this fight. Moving on to the HBO doubleheader, first off we have Alfredo El Perro Angulo taking on Joel the Love Child Julio. Angulo coming off a third round knockout over Harry Joe Yorgi, one of the better knockouts of last year. Before that, he had his first loss by decision to Kermit Cintrone. Joel Julio coming off a win over a unanimous decision over Clarence Taylor. Never heard of him. Guy's got a record of 14-22-4, so take that for what it's worth. Before that, he had a loss by technical knockout to James Kirkland. This should be a pretty good fight while it lasts. When Joel Julio first came out on the scene, had a very impressive record. All of his fights, or almost all of them, by knockout. But since the Carlos Quintana fight, some of the shine, so to speak, is coming off of Joel Julio. And as well, obviously, with the loss to Kirkland. Julio, he's got good power, but I don't think he has the otherworldly power that it was believed when he, with the record that he had early on in his career. And I'm not sure that he has the mental toughness necessarily of Angulo. Julio seemed to get very frustrated midway through in the Quintana fight, and Kirkland just seemed to overwhelm him, and kind of just take him out of his game and pretty much beat him down in way to a stoppage. Angulo in the Cintron fight, even though he lost the fight, he never really gave up, And actually, late in the fight, the later rounds, he seemed to be coming on, but it was too little, too late. I do think it'll be a good fight here, especially early on. I think it'll be pretty competitive. Angulo, obviously, he doesn't have the best defense. He can get hit. He's been hurt before. In the Gutierrez fight, he got hurt, but he came back and stopped Gutierrez in that same round. So he's shown that he can handle adversity. I think he's going to pressure Julio. Not so much the way Kirkland did. Kirkland comes out with a bit more aggression than Angulo does. Angulo fights, though. He's a pressure fighter, throws a lot of punches, somewhat similar in the vein of Antonio Margarito. I do think it'll be a pretty good, competitive, even match early on. And I do think Julio can hurt Angulo, and may even. But I think Angulo will be able to weather the storm if he does face one. And I think his pressure and just his willpower is going to get him the win here. I think he's just going to overwhelm Joel Julio and end up, I think he's going to knock him out. I think he's going to wear him down and take him out late. So I see Angulo taking over the mid-rounds and getting a late stoppage. Moving on to the main event. We have Tomasz Adamek against Chris Arreola. Adamek's coming off the win over unanimous win over Jason Estrada. Before that, he had the TKO win over Andrew Galata. Chris Arreola coming off TKO win over Brian Minto. Before that, he had the loss to Vitaly Klitschko in the bid for the heavyweight title. Fight that he was dominated in. Adamek has looked good at heavyweight since moving up, but he's definitely going to be at a big size advantage here. The heavyweight division is kind of two different categories almost. You got the Klitschko brothers, Valuev, guys that are just large, extremely big heavyweights, and then you got an Arreola. Then you got smaller heavyweights like Adamek, Hay, Chambers, and Povetkin. So you kind of got two different sides of the heavyweight division at the moment. All things being equal, I think if they were the same size, I might actually favor Tomasz Adamek. He's a good technical fighter. He's a tough fighter. He's got some good power. Chris Arreola, he's actually he's got decent technique as well. He's got good power. He actually has good combinations when he's lower in weight. We talked to his trainer on the radio show today, Henry Ramirez. Said that Arreola is going to come in the 240 weight range. Hopefully that's the case. If so, it's obviously going to be very beneficial to him. But you never know. Arreola just never seems to come in the shape that he should in recent fights. But if he does, it's definitely going to be a benefit to him inside the ring. Neither of these guys are all that hard to find in there. Adamek, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be able to withstand Arreola's power if they get into a firefight. And actually, I do think they will get into a firefight. Adamek has been knocked down by Chad Dawson. Granted, he wasn't really stunned, but he did get knocked down. Arreola, obviously, Arreola actually got hit quite a few times against Brian Minto in his last fight, another smaller heavyweight, but Minto didn't have the firepower to really hurt Arreola, keep him off him. Once again, it's going to sound like I'm describing the Angulo-Julio fight all over, but I see a competitive fight early on, possibly a barn burner. I think these guys are going to trade. Adamek is going to be smart to use his movement. He's a smaller guy, so he should have a speed advantage in there. To try to outbox Arreola, try to go to the body, hopefully slow him down. But I just think that Arreola's size and strength is going to be too much. And I just think he's going to be able to, once again, wear him down. I think it's going to be a close fight early, once again. But I just think Arreola's size and strength is just a little too much for Adamek to overcome. Now, could I be wrong? Obviously, yes. Adamek could probably win this fight by decision or even by TKO, although I don't see that happening. Vitaly didn't knock out Chris Arreola, even though he did end up, basically getting a stoppage. But I think Arreola is going to be able to, just get the better of it in the exchanges for sure. And I could see him hurting Adamek, and if he does, Chris Arreola is a pretty good finisher. I could see him jumping on Thomas and finishing him off. Arreola's got big power. He's a big man. So I think Chris Arreola is probably going to win this fight, and I think it's probably going to be by technical knockout. Be sure and check out the websites, thewillbebloodfightshow.com, leaveitinthering.com, my Twitter if you're interested. Links in the information bar as always. And check out the radio show on Thursday. I am pretty sure we'll probably be discussing all these fights. We also had a special radio show yesterday, a roundtable on Floyd Mayweather, Shane Mosley fight. Had a lot of guests on, so you can always go back and listen to that show as well. That's it for now, guys. Probably back on Sunday to talk these fights afterwards. But until then, I'm out.